have some resources, because just sitting down and writing because you have an idea, well, that's fine. And maybe you will be successful doing that. But I've had to study. I've had to spend some time. Now, they say only write on what you know. That's what everybody says, write what you know, but also research. Research, research, research. Don't you know some of the best books you have ever read? The author did their homework.
I have a very special guest speaker joining us today. Gail started her author journey. She has been through a rewarding motherhood journey, and as a single mother of 3 for 16 years, Gail has faced challenges, pain, exhaustion, and heartbreak, and she has decided to strip away all the rules and regulations and give her fellow single mothers hard-won wisdom and real-world insights that only comes from years of experience. She goes through this with writing books that give hope, building organizations for single mothers, and I hope she'll talk with us a little bit about that today, public speaking, and we also have her brand new book that's just been released, and this is how Gail and I met. It's Living, Learning, Loving. Today, we are going to focus a little bit about how to get from the ideas in your head to getting things down on paper and writing. And Gail, you have been a wealth of knowledge and information for other writers, and you've been doing this for a lot of years. Tell us a little bit about how did you get started with wanting to be an author?
I have to confess that I didn't really start out wanting to be an author. I do have some memories very young. I couldn't have been more than 4 years old. And a neighbor came to show my mother a magazine that she had a story in, and she had used the kids in the neighborhood's names in the story. And so it was published, and I got to see my name published in this story. And I remember thinking that somebody has to be the author of these stories. And that was a kind of an awakening. And then when I was about in the 5th or 6th grade, I got an award for a creative writing contest, which I was completely shocked by. I didn't even know it was happening. But most of my life, I was a public speaker, and I got my degrees in speaking and all of that. But things would happen along the way. And one of the significant things, and I'm not even sure April knows this, I was a teacher of Braille. So I taught blind children how to read Braille and other things, but I came out of an art background, and there wasn't anything about art with children who are blind. And so somebody at a convention that worked for the American Printing House for the Blind, I'm not sure if all of you are familiar with that, it's been around a long time, said, why don't you do something, write something? I started experimenting with different projects, mostly tactile projects that teachers could use to teach concepts using art. And they published that little handbook 20 years ago, and it's still in their catalog. So that was an inspiration. I can do this, you know. Then I went to I'm big on going to, especially at the beginning of your work, going to conferences, getting to know people, getting acquainted with people in the industry, learning from them. And one of the first ones I went to, I was put in contact with an editor from Single Parent Magazine, which was pretty good circulation. It's through Focus on the Family. And the gentleman that was editor at the time sat with me, and he was reading something I'd written. And I don't know how these people can read so fast, but they, I think you can write. But you will tell me about yourself. So I told him about how I'd gone back to college with my 3 children in another city. And he said, I want you to write about that. But here's the catch. It has to be for 1 page. It can't go over, I don't remember how many words, 500 words or something very small. And I want you to quote people, and not just quote people, but people all over the country. So I'm telling this story because sometimes writers don't want to do what the editors need for them to do. They have in their heads what they want to do. But if you want them to be published, then you really have to be willing to do what the editors want. And so I mean, I got a phone thing interviewing. This was before Zoom or any of this. Got it all hooked up. I interviewed people. I got people on from Parents Without Partners to interview me or let me interview them. So I did it and it was published. And whenever you see your work published that way, it's very inspiring. Gives you confidence. And so that was kind of how that all came to be. Now, what I think is most important for everybody to know is you have to have a really, really clear idea of where your writing is going to land. In other words, a suggestion that was given to me a long time ago was go to the bookstore and look at the books and look at the category of books where your book would be in the bookstore or even the library. So you can visualize, will this book that I'm writing fit into this particular category on this particular shelf in this bookstore or library? And who is it that will be buying that book? I think a lot of us, we write because we want to write, but we don't think about the reader. We don't think about who's going to be the reader. Now, there's a few of you, I think some of you are writers for children's books, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So you would know what age the child would be, and you would be very familiar with other children's books. I'm trying to find some books right now, as a side note here, for an 11-year-old granddaughter to try to get her to read. And I want to find things that I know she would like. And so I'm looking at that sort of thing. So it won't be too juvenile for her, but it won't be too adult, and that sort of thing. So you really have to know your audience. And that is something they all tell you. But as I've gotten into it more, I really realized the truth in that. Along the way, I also read a lot. And the types of things that I read were in the magazines or that I wanted to be published in. And one of the other things that I was taught at a convention, so this may not apply to you if you're just a children's book writer, is that you need to know the category backwards and forwards. And if your category is just, going to be children's books, that's fine. I couldn't write a children's book if I tried, because I don't think I would have what they want, to keep their attention. But you target your reader.
Right. It's so important to know your target audience. When we were looking at all of the things that you've been doing with single women, so is that how it started for you? Is just that opportunity that you had with just the one area around interviewing single parents and things like that and writing for that particular audience? And then it seems like you've continued to really focus on that target audience moving forward.
Yeah, I started working with single moms in 2007, and we were just doing events. It was pretty loosely organized group, but we did some pretty significant retreats and events for single moms. Then I wrote blogs. I started writing blogs, lots and lots of them. And then other people maybe want me give you an opportunity to write on their blog. And so that's another avenue for writing articles. And what I really want to emphasize is that if you want a lot of readers, you're more likely to get more readers being published in a magazine than by writing a book. It's just kind of the way of the world. I mean, I write for a newspaper, write editorials for a newspaper, and I don't get paid for it. It's just a local paper. And you know how newspapers are these days. They're kind of dwindling, but it's still a good way. And I get a lot of feedback from that. Getting a book published by a standard publisher is so hard and takes so long to go through all of that process that self-publishing seems like a no-brainer to me. And that's what I have done with this book, this particular book. I think, though, if you haven't targeted your audience, one thing you can do when you're writing is to imagine a particular person that reading what you've written. And so think of it, I'm writing this to Sue, my friend, or I'm writing this to some single mom support group. So you're, while you're writing it, you're actually thinking about who's reading it.
Mm.
Now, I've been listening to some things on YouTube, some writers and professors of writing and creative writing and all of that. And there's some really good ones, but most of them say the same thing. They say that you have got to target your audience. You've got to know where your writing is going to be, what category it's in, and not try to do the shotgun approach and make everybody happy. You just can't do that.
Yeah. So when you say target your audience or know your target audience, are you talking about like know their pain points, know their hopes and dreams? How would you recommend that people delve into their target audience and that kind of research?
Well, the research is another good word. First of all, you need to know, is it male, female, both? What age range are you talking about? Are you trying to solve problems? So what problems are you addressing? Because I do mostly nonfiction. I do mostly nonfiction, period. So it's pretty specific for me. But if you're doing children, to me, that would be even more significant because of the age development of the child. It's got to be appropriate for that age level. Like on Amazon, if you look up, books for girls 8 to 12, that's pretty narrow. But you have to know that what you're putting out there is going to fall into a category and it's going to fit. It took me a long time, though, to get to a point where I felt comfortable with a narrow niche for my target.
Now, the other thing too is with children's books as well, we're not only having to understand the child and their needs and who they are, but the parents and grandparents that are going to be purchasing those books, because a lot of the times, that's who's buying. We're not necessarily have to consider them and what they're looking for, what they're trying to get for their child and all of that stuff, as well as kind of understand what we're trying to do for the children themselves. That's always a struggle, just making sure to kind of connect with who are, in what those subsets of people are. So tell us a little bit more about your target audience of single moms. You said you were kind of honing in on a more narrow niche there.
Yeah, and that was something that I learned from conferences and workshops and so forth, is it's better to have a narrow niche than it is to have, I'm writing a book for women. I target women, especially single mothers, but also women who are struggling with things. A divorce, for example, is a good audience. I worked with them, and then about 2015, I realized that these moms needed education. The ones that had education did better than the ones who didn't have maybe a high school GED or something. And so we shifted our focus, and we now help single moms get through college. And that's the nonprofit end of what I do. And we've been very successful. I mean, very careful how we've done it. And we're about to have a big bingo event, July the 4th week. And that's how we make money. I never dreamed so many people down here like bingo, but well, it's been a money maker for us. And so we're able to really make difference in their lives. And it's been a joy. It's been a pleasure for me to get to give back in that way. But I also was a life coach. And then I would work one-on-one with these moms, and I would see what they were struggling with. And so the book actually came together in chapters on different topics that I had written articles on, to have personal stories about. And always remember when you're writing, of course, I don't have to tell this to a children's book writer, but people love stories. I forgot a quote, who said this the other day, when all else fails, tell a story. Mm-hmm. A man who started 60 Minutes said, we are storytellers. And that is powerful. I mean, all of us still remember the stories from our childhood. Mm-hmm. And so I'm very big on stories. When I'm speaking, I do lots of stories because people love it and they remember it.
Right.
So I think that's important. the value of, and I think giving value is one of the key things to do. You're giving value, whatever you're doing, whatever you're writing. The good question would be, when writing a book, is what is the value that the reader is going to come away with? Even children, which, the good books do that. And even the best novels do that.
Mhm.
So what I do is I take a personal experience that I've had that I realize is a unique to me experience. And I start writing about it. I'm not a outliner. I don't do all this special. I used to be an English teacher, so I have to be careful what I say, but I'm not one to outline it and then organize it and everything. It just kind of comes to me this way, oh, I've got to include that, and then I've got to include that, and then it's like a puzzle. The pieces start to come together, but the whole time I know that there's a message in it. There's a valuable lesson in it, but putting it together may be slow. It may not be a quick thing like some people think. And then going back and editing over and over and over and over until you cannot find another error. And also, you asked me more about the single mothers. I have gotten to know some really amazing women, and all of them want to have a better life. The ones we're working with, and some of them are in really difficult situations or have come out of difficult situations. And some of them are like still shell-shocked, or maybe even PTSD because of abuse. And so I have learned to listen, and I direct my stories. It's like, okay, this happened to me, and this is how it happened, and this is how I felt, and so on and so forth. And then if I tell this story, will a single mother benefit from reading it?
Mm.
So that the end of that chapter, we have questions. It could be used for a study because you want the readers to really come away with something changed in their lives.
Mhm.
So it's more an editorial way of writing, and because an editorial, you really do want to change something. You want people to learn something or want to do something differently, or have an aha moment. And so that's kind of the way I've looked at it through the single mom's eyes, because I was single for 16 years with 3 little kids. It was pretty tough, even though I had an education. I could teach. My dad was insistent on that. But I look at these moms that don't have anything to fall back on, no support, no family support, and they need encouragement. And so that's one of the things I write for.
The other thing that I think comes through loud and clear, Gail, with you, is that you have a heart. It's more of a message and a passion and a mission for you to be able to provide and support others. And I feel like when we're called to do something and we really put ourselves into it, not only does that give quite a bit of pleasure in just the doing and the connecting with people, but I feel like, God opens doors when we do that, and we put ourselves out there and we try to help others. And these kinds of self-help books and what you put together for single women is just amazing. The title of this discussion today is From Idea to Publish Page. Do you have any tips or tricks that you'd like to share with the women and others that are watching here on replay? How did you get started with writing? And are there any tricks or things? Because I think the biggest issue with so many of us is giving up, not ever making it through a book, never mind, everything that you've accomplished.
Well, that's really a good question. I think, first of all, I think I would say get someone who can help you, like April is helping me. I was connected with a woman who has I think it's Christian Communicators or something. She's been around a while, and she's editor, and she helped me see what I needed to do. And then once she had edited it, she would give me specific places to get it published. it was always successful. I was like amazed. She just knew the market. But I don't know that, you see. Now, here's another tip I would suggest is that all of you buy a Writer's Market book, Writer's Market Guide. You can pick it up at Barnes and Noble, and it looks thick and all, and it is. But what you do, I get a highlighter, and I think, okay, I have this idea for a story. Oh gosh, I'm not thinking of one right off the bat, but ministering to single mothers in your church, something like that. Because there aren't very many in the church, but it's got sections. It's like a reference book. And it's got sections of books, magazines, and so forth. And you go through the ones that you think your writing would fit with. And this is the thing that they all say, the editors all say, don't send something to us that's not going to fit. Read our magazines. A lot of them will send you copies free to get you aware of what it is they are looking for. And then when you're not spinning your wheels and wasting your time, when you send something in, if they say they do not want science fiction or what fantasy, don't send them science fiction or fantasy, because it's, you're wasting your time. It's going to get tossed in the file 13 and that's it. So this is a really good resource to have. They've come out every year. I have to confess, I haven't bought a 23 book, but I might. And then, and here's another resource that I would suggest, and I just got this, and it's a good book on grammar. And I know everybody has Grammarly or something on their computer, but this is really a valuable and simple book on certain grammar things that are just often abused. So that's another one, Woe is I is the name of it. And then read books like this. This is Ann Dillard's book on the writing life. So have some resources, because just sitting down and writing because you have an idea, well, that's fine. And maybe you will be successful doing that. But I've had to study. I've had to spend some time. Now, they say only write on what you know. And that was what got me writing about my experience as a single mother. But I was looking at YouTube thing and it said, that's what everybody says, write what you know, but also research. Don't you know some of the best books you have ever read? The author did their homework. So I don't know how that applies to children's books, depending, I guess, on the topic of the book. But if you have geography involved, and you need to know your geography. It's not quite as simple or easy as some people think. You don't just sit down and, write. Who is the great author that said to be an author, you sit at the desk and cut your wrist, you bleed on the paper. It takes some time to come up with the right sentence or the right simile or whatever.
So you mentioned that you don't use an outline, and Pat was asking in the chat, so you're just writing by the seat of your pants? Do you use index cards? What's your process in writing the book?
Well, another tip is to always have something to write with and something to write on. Because when you have an idea, as you're drifting off to sleep, or in the night, or when you're in the car waiting for at a carpool line or whatever, you want to have a way of writing it down. Now, we've all got our little iPhones or whatever to do it. I've not quite gotten to the point where I find that real easy. I usually have a little spiral notebook in my purse and a pen. And so then I'll think, oh, I need to include that. And then another time I might think I need to include that. Now, when I say I don't use an outline, I mean, I'm not using a rigid format, but I do not let a manuscript of any type, even a 300-word editorial, just fly off the seat of my pants and just throw it out there. I usually think in terms of paragraphs, and I usually think in terms of my goal. And for example, let me just use this one example. I'm writing a series called The ABCs of Wisdom, and I'm all the way to X. So X was kind of hard. And I looked up did some research, and I found out that the word for thank you in Chinese is exi exi. I don't know how they say it, but that's how it's spelled. So I start writing about thank you. And then that might lead me into different types of thank you. And ultimately, it led me into being thankful to the person that you don't want to thank who changed your life. So for me, it's an evolutionary kind of thing. I'm not one to say, the book just pours out of me, no, but I take time. I take time. And then when I start thinking about an idea, I let it germinate and I let it kind of go where it wants to go. And it's been okay for me so far. Not that every editorial's that great, but they're not bad. So that would be a couple of tips. Research, get you a market guide, research grant. If you're not a former English teacher, you may, and you probably have Grammarly on your computer, but be sure that you're paying attention to your sentence structure and that sort of thing too. And then there are some really good books about writing and from writers. The first, what is the title of Stephen King's book about writing? Now, obviously, you're not thinking you're going to write a Stephen King book, but the first, I didn't read the whole book because after he got into the end of the book was more about how to write fiction. But the beginning of the book, was very good for writers. And it's easy to find out the title of it. I don't remember, but just Stephen King, one of his only, it's probably his only.
Yeah, Gail says it's Stephen King on writing.
Yeah,
yep.
I liked that. And so have your, think of yourself as a professional and have your resources and have your materials and what you like to write with, pen, computer, in such a way, set up in such a way that it's conducive for you to write in that environment. I'm fortunate we took over a bedroom and I've been in here for years. And so that's important too, because you're not considering yourself this is just a hobby. It's more than that. And you may find some really neat encouragement along the way. And one of the things I do, and I'm sure that was something somebody told me was a tip, is to have a file folder called Warm Fuzzies. And that means when people give you a compliment or something good happens around your writing, you keep it because there will be days when you need it.
Oh, yes, that's definitely true. I have my little folder on my desktop called Kudos. So I drop them in there so that I can remember. And I try not to save the ones that are bad.
We don't do that.
I know you have a nonprofit. Are you kind of incorporating that? Is that a good idea in your opinion?
Oh, well, this will be my opinion. I am not an expert by any means on this, but I give away a lot. When I realized how many people, like the people who wrote acknowledgments in the book or gave me reviews, I sent them a hard copy. And it doesn't cost me that much, but it also puts the book, in my opinion, it puts the book out there for them to give to someone. Like this could be a really good book for a women's study group in a church, for example. And so people I know that go to these big churches across the country, I sent them a copy with a suggestion, that they take this to this such and such church. It's not necessarily my church, not necessarily my denomination, but it's definitely not a preachy book. It's not a narrow book. It's very much a broad-minded book. And so it would fit with any congregation I'm aware of. And so I've sent them to Arizona, sent them to Illinois, Indiana, various people I know across the country. And then I have friends in the big churches in Houston. And so that's what I do. And I give them away to my single moms. It costs me what does it cost me, April, $3 or $4 a piece?
Right.
Postage, of course, is involved. But I don't regret doing that. If you're doing it in need of income, that's a whole different world, because you are giving away something that somebody's not purchasing, but some of these people wouldn't purchase the book to begin with because it wouldn't apply to their situations.
A lot of that marketing is very wise to be able to give away, or I've heard others say, they send one to an individual and send another and ask them to share it with somebody else. With regard to your nonprofit though, or aligning with a charity, have you done anything where like a percentage of the proceeds is donated to a certain,
Yeah,
charitable group or something like that? And is that something you would recommend?
we are giving away 50% to our nonprofit because that's basically why I'm doing it. I mean, targeting these single mothers, and we want people to know that we're supporting it. We're backing it up with this. But here again, that's an individual decision, but you could do 20%, you could do 10%, but mainly if you want to just get the book selling and you want people to realize that you're serious about it, that would be a way of letting people know that you're also very serious about the nonprofit that you're supporting.
Pat had one question about how many drafts do you write when you are typically going back and forth with revising?
Quite a few. That's not a good answer, is it? Quite a few. When I'm first putting one together, say an article or an editorial, I just pour it out there and just get in as much on the page as I can. And I don't worry about the grammar at the time. I don't worry about the sentence structure. I just get the ideas on the page. And it's, word processing makes that so easy. And so I get the ideas on the page and then I leave it. I sleep on it. I do not do anything, like I don't send a submission in. I got one that I just sent, it was weeks putting it together because life happens and this and that. But I do think that we sometimes rush through something when if we took more time with it, it would be better. And sometimes you'll go back to something after a week and you'll see all kinds of things you could change, or maybe there needs to be a transition between these two paragraphs. Yeah, that's about it. I can't think of anything else.
Do you have any personal friends or groups that you share, like critique group or anything like that, or somebody you'd send your work to before actually submitting anything?
I did have a group. It didn't last. I don't know that in this area where I live that there are very many people that could sustain a group, but I think it's a good idea.
Do you put your thoughts or ideas on paper as you write, or do you compose on your computer? Do you handwrite or computer for you?
I have done both, but most of the time I'm on the computer. I have a legal pad handy always. Sometimes I like to do it that way, but most of the time it's going to be on the computer because I love the way word processors work.
I would love to have you have an opportunity to share a little bit about the new book and tell people where they can go to find out more information and to support your efforts.
Oh, well, thank you. The book, which I think is lovely. Thank you, April, for your help with it. You can see the size here. And you can get the book, she's made it possible at Walmart, not at the store, but online. I looked online the other day and saw it in Walmart and I was excited.
Good for you.
And Target too, I think. And so, of course, Amazon, you can get it on Amazon. And we've got it in paperback and Kindle, right, April? And Kindle.
Yes.
And maybe one of these days we'll actually get it audio, who knows? But that's one thing that I know single mothers like because they spend a lot of time in the car and you can't write a big, thick book for single mothers. There's just no way she's going to have time to read that. So I'm pretty excited to have it out there again.
This would be a great gift for single moms. I'm doing Christmas in July stuff. So I'm starting to think Christmas all of a sudden. I'm starting to get all excited for gift giving, but yeah, for the single moms in the family and those that are struggling, I think that would be fabulous. And where can people go, Gail, to find out more about you and what you do and the charity that you support?
The organization or the nonprofit is called S'more for Women. It's SMORE. And it's an acronym for single moms, overjoyed, rejuvenated, and empowered. And you can go online, s'moreforwomen.org. And we have a nice website there. And then my website for the book is gailshowalter.com. So you can find out about me or anything you need to know, or you can certainly email me any questions I haven't covered.
Wonderful. Well, I'm so grateful to have you here, and thank you so much for going through this and sharing your process with us. And good luck on this amazing book. I'll be emailing, putting it on my newsletter as well for those that are interested in checking it out. It's beautiful, very beautifully done. Love it.
Yeah, it is nice.
Thank you, everybody, for joining. Have a wonderful
You,
evening.
April.
Bye-bye.
Bye.